Welcome, everyone, to episode 11 of Tech 43, where we hopefully can help you figure out what tech is for you. With us, as usual, we have Eddie. Eddie, say hi.
Hey there.
And Brian in his lovely hat.
Hi, everybody.
Very nice. For this episode, we're going to try to keep it short and sweet. Eddie wants to go over a little bit of stuff because RIP to Allo messaging and Hangouts. For real, that's coming up pretty soon. He's shaking his head. He's already sad. Got that one tier. We'll jump into a little bit of RCS, which is Rich Communication Services. Explain why that's important. If you've ever heard of your friends or anybody talking about iMessage on an iPhone, you may want to think about this if you have an Android phone. And then a little bit of a review, if you will. We talked last episode about the home type of connected home stuff. Brian has a mini review of the Google Home Hub, which he has purchased. I have one in the household as well, so maybe I'll bounce my stuff off of him too. But first, really, I mean, I'll give Eddie a little bit of a second to kind of talk about the fact, because I know he's used both Allo and Hangouts for years. Why these are good, what they are actually. We'll start there, and then what's happening, I guess, to those programs with Google.
So I don't even know where to start with
sad.
Google's messaging disaster. Ever since, for the longest, it's been forever since I've actually used text message as a way to communicate with folks. When Google Plus first came about, there was the Huddle, which was essentially what Hangouts was actually the video calling platform, and the Huddle was the messaging platform. And it used data and your Gmail account instead of a telephone number, which meant that it would transcend carriers, it would transcend devices. You could log onto a computer and message. Like, it was just an incredible system. And then Google moved the Huddle into Hangouts, which became a video and a messaging platform. And it continued to transcend where you could message via your telephone number or Gmail, which is when they kind of rolled Google Voice and everything into it. And then the advent of Project Fi. So the Hangouts became like the ultimate messaging platform. Then instead of what a bizarre decision, instead of like improving Hangouts, they sort of forked off and they created Allo and Duo, which are the messaging and video apps on Android. And they also created another little app they called Spaces, which was like maybe Teams, Cisco Teams, or I'm trying to think of where Slack, for instance, would be something similar, where it was like a group of people at work that could, and then they had all these messaging apps, and then they had Android messages, which they started to work on. And so now, after all that, and each time they came out with one, I would convince all my family and friends to get on it, and then they would like kind of shutter it. And then I've moved from platform to platform, and now finally, I think maybe 2 or 3 days ago, Google made an official blog post that they were going to close down Allo. Hangouts is still unclear where it's going to be enterprise, but maybe consumer-based also. Currently, there is no text messaging solution on Project Fi. You have to use Hangouts, so something has to happen there. This all kind of they're taking the best parts of all of those different messaging apps and moving it into one. And that will have the way that it works has a name called Rich Communication Services, which is what you may hear the RCS. It is the ability to it's like text messages on steroids. So you have the ability to send significantly longer messages. An actual text message, if you were to send an image of some kind, gets compressed to the point where it's disgustingly blurry. That'll fix that issue where you get full res pictures. It will allow iMessage-like features to come to Android. And I know that, iMessage as a messaging app sells iPhones and keeps people on the Apple platform simply because they like the way that messaging operates. The only downside is that Apple controls that process from end to end, and Android has a near infinite number of variables. So currently, you could get it before on other carriers. I think T-Mobile, Sprint had it on limited release on Galaxy S7 devices. And then Verizon now has it on the newest Pixel devices, the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 3 XL. I have not got it on mine yet, and I've uninstalled,
beyond surprising. Yeah.
I have no idea why, and it could be because I'm on an old plan that I just can't get the profile added to my account. I'm not really sure yet, but Google has been losing my favor lately as far as they keep closing down things that I like to use. And I don't mind if they kind of mold it into something better, but it makes me nervous to use a Google product, like a brand new app that comes out, and get invested in it, because their shelf life is just terrible. Like
they've taken so many things away from you necessarily, but like the messaging apps in particular. I mean, we've had every version of anything from years ago. It's been what, 5 or 6 messaging apps of sorts in one form or another. And Allo was to us going to be the initial whole rich communications that kind of felt like iMessage, but it had to be the same app on every Android phone. You had to have that app and everything like that. This RCS, or rich communication services, is basically the behind the scenes stuff that's going to make that's within Android messages, correct?
It's just like the background profile.
Mm-hmm.
Like
they're calling it chat.
Most folks probably don't remember, but there was a time when text messaging only worked between carrier. Like you could only text message from Verizon to Verizon and AT&T to AT&T. Like there was no carrier interoperability between text messages. And then, so if you were on AT&T and you had a family member on Verizon, you couldn't message them. That has changed since everybody got together and sort of made one universal way, a core technology, and then text messaging was born as we know it today. And now that is happening again. But the problem is the network was so much simpler then. With all the complexities that there are now, it's hard for me to imagine how this is going to work across every carrier, across so many different devices. As time will tell, and this Pixel thing is probably more like a test to show, your Pixels don't have a high penetration as far as devices are concerned, so they're able to test with a group of people, and usually, most a high percentage of Pixel owners are usually very forward thinking technologically, so they're gonna try to hurry up and get chat and hurry up and use it, and they'll be the testing ground. But with Inbox and Google Plus and all those things, like they're real close to me having an iPhone in my pocket the next.
Super jaded. I mean, well, I guess
too, correct me if I'm wrong here, but their approach to it is vastly different than Apple's, right? I mean, because Apple integrated everything through the Apple ID to make their rich communication services, and then just had SMS in the background. And now Google is trying to do it, I think, in a more convoluted way, getting the carriers to do it for them instead of what they're doing now, where they were creating all these different platforms to try to move people to and couldn't. Is that right?
Yeah, there's
a fair way
so the only way that you can take advantage currently of an Apple-based rich messaging system is if you talk to another Apple product. If you were to throw in another device, like an Android phone,
Red and green
then
bubbles.
that goes all the way down the toilet. Like you lose all the capabilities. You lose the graphics capabilities. You lose the ability to see, like, read receipts. You lose the high resolution images. So Google is trying to universalize this across the board. So there is no green bubble, blue bubble kind of thing where everyone gets the advantage. But in doing that, they have an uphill battle because, Apple was in control of their end and they control it from end to end. So that's not an issue. It's iPhone to iPhone, just a handful of models to a handful of models based off of the backbone of the Apple ID. And now you've got Google that there are thousands of different Android-based models of phones across, hundreds of different carriers. So it is quite a dramatic, it's quite a, undertaking for them to try to do this. And I mean, it needs to happen, and someone has to get everyone on the same page. It's just, I feel like it's not going to be a quick thing. It's going to take quite some time. And it may be just siloed into a handful of devices at first and be quite some time before other devices get it.
I mean, to think about just Android to Android devices being able to have some of the capabilities of iMessage, even if it's only Android to Android, which is going to feel like an iPhone iMessage situation anyways, because they're iPhone to iPhone. I think then we're probably less than 50-50 that Apple's even going to entertain the idea of looking at that, because that helps create the walled garden, if you will. But I mean, how many people? I mean, all of us have family members that have an Android phone that couldn't send a text message in a bad service area, but had Wi-Fi.
Right.
So they could have if RCS or Rich Communication Services was a thing with Android already. Or they wanted to send a picture, but the picture file size was too large, so they couldn't send it in a text message. So you're telling them to email it or take the picture from the messaging app so it down reses it or whatever else it would be. People like Facebook Messenger because they can see when people are typing or when they've read something. So those types of things sometimes may feel superficial, but those are the features that the average person wants to see.
I mean, ultimately, Apple's going to have to play ball because that core text messaging network will not be around forever. So once that is deprecated, then you've got the RCS service. Apple will have to have some way to receive that. Otherwise, ultimately, what will happen is there will be no way to communicate with anyone otherwise. And with Apple's, continuing push into enterprise and business and their constant, trying to get more and more Apple devices into the hands of folks, you have no choice but to play ball, as far as you can't afford for your customers to not be able to communicate in the ways they need to, because then if you say, well, you can't communicate with iPhones, you run the risk of people saying, well, to heck with this, I have business to run, so I'm going to get an Android.
But I think it's exciting at the base of the whole conversation for an Android user to be able to get some of the functionality of an iMessage type of thing with all those things. Like a lot of the things that would be really productive for the average person with the Wi-Fi messaging over Wi-Fi, being able to send those high resolution video and pictures through that messaging situation. Group chats, which is a big issue with switching back and forth between iPhones and Android phones, is that group chat scenario and group text. And some of the other stuff, like there's being able to have boarding passes in a text message, or I think the Apple iMessage thing was like sending money in an iMessage, which is beyond creepy. I know that the security is really good on the iMessage side of things because of the control they have. The RCS on Android isn't going to be quite as secure as what they have over on Apple, but for people with Android devices to have some of these features, I think is one small step towards a bigger thing. And then, like Eddie said, I mean, Apple's going to have to play ball at least a little bit so that iPhones can text Android phones when regular SMS is kind of going away, because we're seeing CDMA kind of go out the door and 4G and LTE kind of run how phones work at this point.
And hopefully Apple, forces them to subscribe to the encrypted end-to-end camp, because currently that's the only thing that makes me nervous about moving into this, is that there is no end-to-end encrypted solution. And if you're going to do things like sending money, payment information, boarding passes, if all this personal information is going over the traveling from device to device, I don't sleep easy, knowing that it's vulnerable to a man-in-the-middle attack of some sort. So I think that currently the not being encrypted end to end is a massive shortcoming, and hopefully that once it gains momentum and steam and goes along the way, it goes catches on, that will be something that is no longer on the back burner and something that's important to have, because I don't I can't use it. I don't want to use it in that respect if it doesn't have those kind of security measures put into place.
I think you're right, though. If it gets picked up by the carriers and the manufacturers that it needs to get picked up by, those things will be on the front burner, and then it'll come up faster, and more things will be developed for it, for what's necessary for it to be everything that iMessage is. If it starts to you got to get the ball rolling a little bit to kind of. Then everything that we've talked about are major pluses. I mean, this is one of the first times we're talking about Android trying something way after the fact compared to Apple. So there's always that. But that was a fairly deep conversation. I mean, it got into some scary parts with the whole monetary stuff and text messaging, but I think it's a relevant conversation. We all like every Apple user loves their blue bubbles, likes to see when people have read their messages or when they're typing. I'm one of them. I enjoy that. Being able to send an actual whole resolution picture in that text message thread. So I think that for Android users, this is an exciting thing that maybe they haven't heard about, because if they're not receiving the same notifications for news that us three are actually reading about every day. So let everyone that's out there kind of know that this is something that's closer than you think, maybe not to the full level, like Eddie was saying, to where it should be, but it's closer than what we're actually thinking. And some of those features that iMessage has that none of the Android user have is kind of coming, and is an exciting time for them for sure. Anything else you wanted to add on that, Eddie, before we move on?
No, just that if Google is watching or scrubbing YouTube for certain audio cues, you've got like one app cancellation left before I switched to iPhone. So
it's pretty true.
I'm like,
losing Inbox was big.
It's the greatest email app ever. What is? I mean, I know why it's happening. Shame on Google for it. It's not even. It's ridiculous that.
He's sighing out loud.
There is no greater email client than Inbox. It is the single greatest email app that I've ever used. And I opened Gmail the other day just to open it so that I could start to wean myself back onto it. And it is gross and disgusting. It's just, I can't believe it. I have no words.
Gross
and disgusting making an appearance in this episode.
I mean, he's not wrong.
Yeah, I get it. I know.
It's really not a good experience. The notification system on it is not great either. Like, it's like an all or nothing sort of thing, right? You either have priority inbox where you see a quarter of your email, right, or you're just getting everything. And I can't find the balance. Inbox, you could at least manage relatively easily. Set reminders right from it.
Like I said, now I'm just like in every other Google app, just trying to do different things. Like everything I need to do is in a different Google app. Deep breaths, Eddie. We're going to move on so you don't hyperventilate. The only other real thing that we were going to talk about this is that RCS stuff was kind of cool. Like I said, I just thought it was something that needed to be talked about because it's exciting for Android users to kind of have some of that functionality. But last episode, we talked a lot about the smart home, and the backbone of the smart home these days is the Alexa systems and the Google Home systems in whatever version that you decide. We talked a little bit about the Google Home Hub. Brian has acquired one.
Finally.
So kind of going to get his little bit of a review / experience with it. I have one that I purchased for the parental unit. So that's in their kitchen. So we'll get an idea of what that's been for us. But so your thoughts, Brian, on what you think, really?
So far, it's been great. I was a little concerned about having a smart display because I think my wife accurately pointed this out. Like, what on earth are you going to use it for? Like, how is it any different than our current home, Google Home Mini situation? What makes it different? I was like, well, it has a display. And then that's where my argument ended, and I bought it anyway. So, so it arrived, and it is a lot smaller than I expected. But I did get the mint green version, since we're painting our kitchen green, and that was where I decided I wanted it and felt it would be most useful given my home setup now. So, I have 2 Google Home Minis, one in the living room. We have a finished basement. We have one down there, and then we have Chromecasts on every TV. So we have 3 TVs, one in the basement, one upstairs, and then one in our bedroom. They're all hooked up with Chromecasts. And so I was like, well, I don't really want this in the bedroom, so we're going to put it in the kitchen because I like to listen to music while I cook. I like to watch videos or movies while I'm cooking. And I just thought it'd be nice to have in there in general, as opposed to, trying to listen to music off of my speaker that's in the living room. So, the thing arrived. I got it. Was very excited. And so I opened it up. And Mark, I think you said this before the episode. I was shocked at how small the screen was on it, and I don't know why.
It's tiny. It's tiny. I mean, even the box makes you think it's going to be a bigger device, and everything that they showed on the keynote and stuff just made it feel like it was going to be a larger device.
Yeah, and so that was the first thing. I was like, man, this is small. It's really small, and so I think in a lot of ways it works to its benefit. It's really unobtrusive. And so the only things it comes with, it comes with the Home Hub, it comes with a charger, and then it comes with the little Let's Get Started guide. And literally the only directions in there, plug it in, download the Google Home app, and go from there. And setup on it was a breeze. Opened up the Home app, plugged in the Google Home. It had to do an update. And once it finished that, linked it to my Wi-Fi and then told it what I wanted on there. And that was it. It just kind of did its own thing and ported everything in. It did ask a couple different questions that a Home Mini doesn't ask. And because it's a display, it wanted to know, like, how do you want it to be when it's in, idle, right? So I use it as a digital photo frame, and then you can pick what people you want to be able to see in it. So, I was like, well, let's pick myself and my wife, and then recent memories was one of them too. So like so now it's showing, pictures of us, pictures of our cat, because it recognizes my cat as a member of my family. So go Google. Google also thought my cat was a dog for a while, but that's a different story.
Because it's huge.
It is huge. She's very large. But anyway, and then it'll show us pictures from our trip to Disneyland and Universal and Europe over the summer. So that part of it, super nice. So for me, I don't have the most connected of homes. Mark and Eddie definitely have more connected products than I do. I do have the Nest, and then I have all the other, the minis and the Chromecasts. But for me, the benefit to it so far has been being able to look up recipes and recipe videos while I'm trying to cook. And my wife originally, who was like, we don't need this thing. And I was like, no, trust me, you'll like it, because she uses the Home Mini every morning and has a routine set up on it to, tell her the weather, tell her what's on her calendar, and then it plays her the 2 or 3 news podcasts that she likes to listen to in the morning. Lo and behold, a day after I got this thing, she's in there making dinner, has the recipe up on the home hub, scrolling through it. And I was like, ha, I told you. Because her argument against it was, why don't you just use the iPad that we have? And I said, I don't like the iPad. So far it's been great. I talk to it every morning and ask it to tell me the weather. And it's kind of cool. It makes, if it's going to be raining, it'll make rain noises in the background, and snowing, it kind of makes a whooshy wind type of sound. And then at night it goes into like a super dim clock mode. So it doesn't look like the screen is on at all for the most part. And you can just very faintly make out what the time is. The light sensor on it has been great. It supposedly is able to adjust for the type of light that's in your room. So since it's a kitchen, my kitchen is mostly white, white cabinets, white lighting, it tries to, blend itself into its background with the pictures that it shows. And so I haven't really noticed too much there, just because of the nature of the environment that it's in, right? It's not like showing me all white pictures. It's just showing whatever it wants. I would say it's a solid buy. I really like it. It makes me want to get more stuff that I can control from it. So.
I was gonna say, I was like, well, we could have you show the setup, but literally it was just straight from the home app. And and from my experience, they just saw each other. As soon as you open the home app and you go to add another device, it sees the hub.
Yep.
So it's pretty much that. Like, they basically just see each other, and that's the end of it. The cool part is, and like Brian could attest to, if it were, and I think they used this as a promotional sort of bit with the home hub when it first came out, was the control panel, if you will, if you slide down, for all of the rooms and devices that you have, based on lights and your thermostat and things like that. So it was an easy hub, if we're going to use the word hub, for all of the smart things that you have in your house. And it's easy. And on my mother's, you literally just slide it down: kitchen, living room, dining room, TV room, and the lights that are in there, and can change the same way you would if you were in the home app on your phone. And if you're already there, it's all in one situation. And that was there. As soon as you paired it, it knew everything from the home app. So it's not like you were putting anything. I haven't checked into the digital photo frame stuff, because I was worried it's like, what pictures are going to pop up? Like, I think we're all worried about that. It's her phone.
What pictures are showing up on.
Yeah. It's her phone. So it's not like it's my situation. So, how did that work in the setup of that? I'm just kind of curious on my own.
It had me pick through.
Go through the photos app.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the exact screen, but it took me to, how do you want it to behave when it's not showing you information? And so you had a couple options in there, and one was that it would cycle through your Google Photos, and then you could pick, because photos will identify people that you have identified, or if if you're friends with them on Google Plus, it would do that automatically. So, it automatically recognizes, myself, Vicky, my sisters, my cat or dog, depends on the day. My friends, all that stuff. So it has like little tiles of their faces, and then you just select which people you wanted. And then recent memories was in there too. So I selected that as well.
That's cool. I'm assuming you can do that after the fact, after the setup, initial setup.
Yeah. And it's all managed through the app.
Okay. I was going to say, so you do that through the home app.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The only thing that we had some difficulty with, and I think this might have been the way we set our home up originally, and I was discussing this with Mark and Eddie before we went live, was getting my wife's Gmail account to sync properly to the home hub. It was working on all of our minis, but not the home hub. It only recognized me and wouldn't recognize her voice. And for whatever reason, we needed to reconfigure our home. I seem to remember we had a power outage like a year ago. And when I set up the devices again, I set them up with like under me, and then they made a change in the home app where you could have more than one home or something like that. And I never like fully set up Vicky as a member of that home, but it remembered all of our settings from the first time. And so once we straightened that out, everything was fine.
There you go. I think I knew
literally every single device disconnected from our accounts last year. It was like we were trying to, I can't remember what we were trying to do. We were trying to watch something on our Chromecast and it wasn't there. And I was like, why is that not connected to the Wi-Fi? So I'm resetting the router. Like, no, that's not working. I'm trying to, I went into the home app and finally saw everything listed as like set up a new device. And there's like 6 devices. I'm like, oh my God, what?
That's cool though, because I know that I was reading up on the digital photo frame aspect of the hub, and I was like, we didn't do it during the initial setup. Sometimes you're worried, like, how do you get back into that aspect? So it's just pretty much baked into the home app.
You can change it whenever you want.
Okay. That was the only thing that I had seen that I didn't have a chance to set up, but ours was similar. I mean, a lot of it was just the cool aspect of being able to see the hub of all of your smart devices in your house by room and the high level of connectivity it had or changeability with lights on, lights off, and it does everything that the home, all the mini homes and the regular Google Home did. One thing I was telling Eddie is I feel like it's not quite as sensitive or as good at hearing you use the keyword as the other homes were. Like, you may have to be a little bit louder or more clear speaking to it, from my experience with it, than with the small ones.
I haven't had that same experience, but mine also kind of sits in a corner in my kitchen. So when I'm talking at it, right, the sound must reflect properly into the microphone. But my experience with like the sound quality and everything, and these have a physical rocker for the volume up and down, which is nice. I haven't had any issues with audio or with it picking my voice up. And then once we figured out how to set each other up correctly, it correctly differentiates between us. Haven't had any problems like that with it at all.
Yeah, I think that maybe her kitchen was the issue. Go ahead, Eddie.
Does it support continued conversation out of the box for you guys?
I honestly haven't tried it. I don't know.
I would assume so, considering like it doesn't make a ton of sense for it not to.
I have everything on these janky betas, and like I have it, but I'm getting ready to talk to people about it. I'm like, I wonder if they have that feature. Like, I forget that I'm like several weeks or months into the future, and then I'll talk to somebody and say, oh yeah, I was doing this and that, and they're like, how the heck did you do that? And I'm like, ooh. So you will. Like,
you will be.
So what you have to do is you do exactly what I did 8 weeks from now, and it'll work. But I wasn't sure if because as soon as it came out of the box, it recognized my account, and it was just, I was already in beta, but I wasn't sure if that was something that it came right out of the box where you had that continued conversation option.
I was checking it.
I'm looking at the app right now to see.
Go ahead.
In the app, I do not see it because it's a setting in the app, right?
Yeah.
I do not see it for the Home Hub.
It looks like some people are not being able to find it, so maybe that's not a thing just yet. We'll try that. How about we try that out maybe in an episode later on, or maybe even in the comments once we figure it out. We can pin a comment there to let them know whether we saw that or not.
Because I feel like it might be an account setting, not necessarily a device setting, but I don't remember. Anyway,
right.
So far, positive experience.
I was going to say, so that's a 100% would purchase.
Yeah, I would definitely. I'm considering getting another one.
That was kind of the next question. Was how many are you going to buy? But yeah, I mean, once Brian was super excited to be like, I want to talk about this. So we were like, okay, we'll give you a couple minutes to kind of.
Yeah, I was going to do an unboxing, but it was so easy to set up. Like, it just literally, you just download the app and it does it. Yeah. There's nothing to show. And then I also was thinking, like,
rough.
I don't have another camera that I can use. So I would have to do this on my Pixel while, and I was like,
Yeah. I
once
mean, it would
realized
have
how
been taking
stupidly easy
it
is.
would have been taking the hub out of the box and then taking the charging cord out of the box, and then you're done.
And then like, oh, look, here's the instruction guide. Oh, there's 2 sentences.
But I think I agree with you that it was a pretty solid addition if you're already kind of in that situation. I think we all think, I think they position it as like, excuse me, a kitchen type of thing for the video aspect. So that's where ours is in the kitchen. That's where yours is. So it makes a lot of sense to kind of do that.
You know, and like I said, being able to have recipes displayed on it, super helpful. Like, you know, they're right there. There's a button on, you know, at least the website that Vicky had pulled hers from. You know, there were 2 buttons on the bottom that would take you to the next step and the next step and the next step. So there might be some compatibility things as well, depending on where you're pulling that stuff from. I'm sure there is. But yeah, whatever one she was using had that ability and was compatible with the Home Hub, and you could just keep pressing on the screen and it would keep going through the steps of the recipe. So, which was really convenient.
Yeah, so I think it's a go for both of us on my end and Brian's, and Brian's bought into that scenario.
2 thumbs up.
I was going to say, we see the thumbs. Basically, after Brian's very, very exciting review, that was basically all we wanted to talk about. Eddie was super sad time about the Allo and Hangout situation. So I let him.
Mark and I brought the mood back up.
Yes, we tried. Eddie's still not happy. He's not a happy camper right now.
Like, the Home Hub doesn't have an Allo on it.
Eddie's like, one more app, Google, one more app. And I got an iPhone, which I never thought would happen. So that's, like I said, that's basically where we were at. There's a couple of things. I still think RCS and rich communication services is something we should be excited about for Android, regardless of the time frame. The fact that it's on the radar and is like here-ish is 100% a good thing, unless you want to ruin that for me, Eddie.
No, it's here-ish.
Yeah, nice. So I think that's something to be excited about for Android. Whether or not we get the integration with Apple right away or soonish, we'll see. But for Android users, it's a big deal. If you have more questions about what it does, what it's going to be able to do in the future, we have a comment section. Eddie's in there, Brian's in there, I'm in there. We'll answer whatever's necessary. If you want to see any of the setup stuff for this smart home stuff, how Brian went through his situation in some more detail, we can do another video on that. You can get in the comments. We can answer some of those questions.
Happily master reset my Home Hub and figure out a way to video it.
There you go. So yeah, I mean, whatever's necessary. Like I said, there's a comment section. We can kind of cover whatever. Try to stay down there and figure out what you guys are asking and what we can do for you. Eddie also has a channel of his own. I always like to give him a second to kind of let us know what he's got going on, if he's got anything new coming out, anything floating around in the world of all things tech nerd.
So Eddie Daniels is my channel, All Things Tech Nerd. You can search it. I'm competing with the clarinet player of the same name. But
we're getting him to the top.
That's right. I got a ton of stuff that's almost done. None of it's done. So it's going to be a very eventful, next 3 or 4 weeks where it's just going to be nonstop, one video after another on just an unbelievable variety of subjects. Everything from actual products themselves to software with Tesla and some of the new devices that have come out in the past 2 or 3 weeks. I always scour the internet to see what everybody's doing a ton of, and then I try to find the little things that you can't really find, the things that get skipped over. So found quite a few things, and I have an equal amount of desire to cover all of them. So I did everything, but never finished any of it. So that's the plan going forward. I'll have some time off here for the holidays, and I'm really gonna, put my nose to the grindstone and push them all out. So I'm looking forward to getting that done so I can relax.
I'm pretty sure Brian is usually pretty good at having your channel linked at the end. So we'll have a link to our last episode as well as Eddie's channel, I believe, right, Brian?
Yep. I forget which order I put them in. I want to say subscribe, Eddie, previous episode.
Either way, you'll see Eddie's face, you'll see a subscribe scenario, and you'll see the previous episode. But
you may see it more than once because sometimes, like, it seems like the screenshot that Google picks for the thumbnail is always me, like if I was a vampire and I was exposed to light, where I'm like, In fact, this is it.
The first 4 episodes were me making funny faces, so I don't want to hear it.
I'm calling it now. Like, so when I go and I check this episode out, it's gonna be like,
Yeah. So on a lighter note, Eddie's not going to attack Google because he's all excited now about all his videos he needs to finish. So, like I said, if there's anything that you have questions about from this episode, whether it's the RCS stuff, need more information, want to know what that's all about, if you want Brian to do some more stuff on the Google Home Hub or other smart home stuff, let us know in the comments. Like I said, we're all available to kind of answer those sort of things. And check out Eddie in one of the 15 ways that Brian will put in there to be able to see it. But other than that, I think we're good for episode 11. I'd like Eddie to say goodbye.
Goodbye, Eddie.
And Brian.
Goodbye, Eddie.
And for those guys and Tech 43, we'll see you guys in the next episode. See ya.